For the longest time, I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God. I thought anyone remotely religious was just an idiot. But after what I experienced, I'm not so sure anymore. I used to babysit for twins a few years back. They were girls. Their names were Carla and Remy. Both were cute as buttons, and they never gave me any issues. They must have been about 10 at the time, and I remember as clear as day, I was babysitting them while their parents were out of town. I did my usual routine with them, played games, built sandcastles with kinetic sand, and watched a Disney movie before putting them to bed. They must have been sleeping for an hour when I started to hear noises. At first I yelled up from the living room that they better be sleeping, but they ignored my commands. I went upstairs and found both girls on the floor with a blanket over them and a flashlight turned on underneath. They were giggling when I threw the blanket off them. I asked them why they were out of bed, and I did not expect the answer. Carla said they were talking with Aman. I scanned the room, only seeing the twins, and asked who Aman was. Remy then said he was the devil who lived in the corner of their room. She pointed to the dark corner where their nightstand was. There was nothing or no one there. I wasn't buying their antics and told them that's enough and they need to go to bed. They obliged and went back to sleep. When I was back down in the living room, that's when I noticed all the lights were off, even the TV. This startled me because I didn't turn anything off when I went upstairs. I flicked on one of the switches and nothing came on. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flash. When I did, I saw something dark quickly dart across the living room and into the kitchen. I thought it was one of the twins at first, but that was impossible as I had just left their bedroom. Wondering if someone had broken in, I turned to go back up the stairs, and both twins were standing right there. They said Aman was down here, and he's not happy. I quickly rushed the girls upstairs, worried that it was an intruder rather than some made-up demon. I locked the bedroom door and tried to call their parents. Strange enough, I suddenly lost all signal as well. Just as my anxiety was reaching peak levels, there was scratching at the door. The girls then ran under the covers and said it was Aman. Just then, I heard deep growling, like some kind of creature or animal. The door started to shake and then rattle. I thought it was going to break. In that moment, I remember saying out loud for God to help me, despite my lack of belief. In an instant, the shaking and growling ceased. I opened the door, and to my horror, saw scratch marks all up and down the door, and the scratches were deep. Me and the girls waited in their bedroom until their parents got home around midnight. I showed them the door and explained what happened, but despite my attempts, they did not believe me and claimed I was an irresponsible babysitter for allowing their girls to do such damage to the door. I was appalled and fired on the spot. A few days after this happened, I googled the demon name Aman. Apparently, he was some kind of demon that had a ram's head. But that's when I realized if demons were real, then surely God must be too. I've since become more devout in my faith and always wear a cross. I haven't seen the twins since then and hope it has left them alone. I can only pray that it has. I'm still in shock from everything that has happened. I need to get this off my chest. I can't sleep, I can't think straight, and I'm afraid for my friend's safety. This isn't some kind of made-up story or a prank. This was real, and I hope sharing it here might help me make sense of things. About 3 weeks ago, my friends and I decided to check out an old abandoned house on the edge of town. It's been a local legend for years, and supposedly it's haunted, but we did not believe that. We were just bored and looking for something to do. When we got there, the house was a complete mess, with broken windows and overgrown weeds. We went in, mostly to explore and take some dumb selfies for Instagram. Nothing much happened at first, though. We joked about ghosts and took pictures of the creepy, dark rooms. But that's when things started to get weird. It started with small stuff, sounds we couldn't quite identify, like footsteps or whispers. We thought it was just the house settling or maybe some animal, but then things started to escalate. One of my friends, Sarah, got a text from an unknown number. It said, "I see you." We all laughed it off, thinking it was just someone playing a prank, but the text kept coming. "I know where you are. I'm watching. You'll never leave." We tried to figure out who was sending the messages, but the number was unavailable when we tried to call it. We left the house, thinking that we were done with it, but that night, things got worse. Sarah's phone rang. It was a FaceTime video call from that unknown number. She answered out of curiosity, and what we saw still disturbs me. The screen showed nothing but darkness, but in the background, we heard a low, guttural growl. The next day, we all got texts from that same number, this time with pictures of our houses, inside and out. Each photo was taken from a different angle, as if someone was stalking us. We also received photos from the night that we were in the haunted house, taken from inside the house. We hadn't seen anyone there, but someone or something had been there. We decided to go back to the house to see if we could find anything. We brought flashlights and checked every room, but we did not find anything. Just when we were about to leave, we saw something on the wall, a symbol like a dark, clawed handprint or something. It didn't make any sense. We couldn't figure out what it meant, but it didn't feel right, like it was meant to scare us or something. But what was even stranger, that night, we all shared the same exact nightmare. In our dreams, a dark figure was stalking us. Sometimes it was just a shadow, other times it had a face that was twisted and red and demonic. The final straw came last weekend. I was home alone, and my parents were out of town. I heard scratching noises coming from the attic. I didn't have an attic door in my room, but the noises were so unsettling that I had to go and check. I climbed up into the attic, and that's when I saw it. The walls were covered in the same clawed handprints we saw in the house, and there, in the corner, was a small pile of old, rotting animal bones. I bolted out of the attic and called my friends. We all decided to stay at one of our houses together, figuring it would be safer. But even still, we still feel like we're being watched. Strange things have still been happening. Things moving on their own, lights flickering, cold spots in rooms. We're all on edge, constantly looking over our shoulders. I don't know if it was a demon, a ghost, or just someone with a really twisted sense of humor. But whatever it is, it's not going away. I'm terrified for my friends and for myself. I don't know what to do or who to turn to. Has anyone else experienced something like this? I'm at my wit's end, and I don't know where to go from here. And I've got a story that I can't shake off, and I'm still not sure if I'm just losing my mind or if something truly messed up is happening. My girlfriend, Emily, and I decided to rent out an Airbnb for a weekend getaway. The place was cheap, which was surprising, given that it was a historic house. The owner did not live on site, and we only had the address and a key left in a lockbox for us. When we arrived, the place looked like it was stuck in the 70s. The furniture was outdated, and the wallpaper was peeling in some areas. It had this creepy charm to it that I thought would be interesting for a weekend escape. We settled in and spent the first evening watching TV and exploring the house. It was a pretty standard experience, until around midnight, when things started to get weird. Emily was in the bathroom, and I was in the living room when I heard her scream. I rushed to the bathroom and found her pale and shaking. She said she saw a shadow move across the bathroom mirror, but when she turned around, no one was there. And I was able to calm her down, telling her that it was just an old house playing tricks on us, and we went to bed. That night, I woke up to what sounded like whispering. It was barely audible, but it felt like it was coming from all around the room. I tried to ignore it, thinking that it was just the wind or my imagination. I looked over, and Emily was still fast asleep, and that's when I decided to go investigate a little bit. I walked throughout the house, checking each and every room. Everything seemed normal, so I went back to bed. The next morning, Emily was even more on edge. She said she had trouble sleeping because she felt like someone was watching her. We decided to cut the trip short and leave early, but before we did, I wanted to check the basement. The house had one, and it was locked with a heavy padlock. I managed to find a key in a drawer that fitted, and we went down to the basement. It was damp and musty, filled with old furniture covered in sheets. The strangest thing was, an old wooden chest in the corner, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes. I opened it, and inside were a bunch of old newspapers and what looked like a personal journal. I didn't have time to read through them, but something about them felt unsettling. We left the house quickly after that. On our drive home, Emily told me she had a dream that night before we left. She said she saw figures in the house, dark and shadowy, and they were trying to get to us. I laughed it off as just a nightmare. And a few days later, Emily did some research on the house. Apparently, the place had a dark history. There were reports of strange disappearances and other unexplained events linked to it over the years. It didn't make much sense until I started placing everything together. The whispers, the shadows, the feeling of being watched. Also, the journal. I have a strange feeling that if I was to go through that journal, I might have read something that I didn't want to read. And I think it's safe to say that we don't plan on vacationing to any Airbnb soon, especially that one.